Drifshers, welcome to Drift Tips Friday, presented by the Drift Podcast. We're here working on the R34 again. Today, we're going to put a constant thermofan on the front of my car because I hate overheating.
So tools for today, we're going to need multimeter.
And a test light.
I also like this clamp meter because I can test how much amps the thermofan's going to be actually draining so that we can put the correct size fuse in there as well. So
let's get to it.
Okay guys, so this is going to be how to correctly find ignition 12 volt on your car for wiring up a relay. You don't want to be pulling it off power that isn't high enough voltage or isn't going to be able to handle the amperage load of that relay. Relays don't draw very much, but they still draw some. So we're just going to go through that now. We have here plugs up the front that are spare. You would think that you would be able to just find correct 12 volts to be able to run off these. I know that this one is showing up as it has voltage, and also this one. Now if we get our multimeter though, we just set it to volts on the multimeter and we watch that, and I'll connect that to negative and I'll connect it to here. So it loads. See, we only have actually 9.3 volts, and as well down here we also have 9.3 volts DC. That means that this is most likely running off the ECU power, and it's not actually able to output enough power to even run the relay. So we have to find something else. You don't want to run too much and draw too many amps through your ECU because it's not designed for it, and it could actually blow a capacitor or something else inside of your ECU, and you don't want that happening. Be careful. Try to understand where you're actually pulling power from. I suggest if it is coming anything less than actual direct battery voltage, then don't actually use it because it's probably running through your ECU or something else. So we'll go through and find the correct spot where we can pull voltage off. On this car, we did notice that if we pull it off this plug here that wasn't being used for one of the, basically it's a environmental thing for your boost control, we just have removed that solenoid because we don't need it with this car. So we have spare 12 volt power. I've measured it, it's ignition 12.4 volts. We'll use that. What we have done to make it a little bit neater is we actually had the old boost control solenoid. We chopped off the plug, so now we're actually able to directly plug into this and nicely wire and terminate our relay, switching power straight off of this, and then we'll connect it directly to 12 volt. It would be nice to actually run it through the fuse box if we could. There we go. The nicest way would be pinning it in through these fuses here and actually running direct. You can undo all of this and run a new terminal up through there and a factory fuse, and you can pull power directly off there. We have here though, what we're going to use, this is just a fused relay and 4 terminal fused relay with a mount. The other thing as well to note is this is a 12 volt 80 watt fan. So you just use your simple maths and that ends up being an 8 amps that will draw. 80 watts divided by 12 volt is 8 amps. So we'll chuck in a 10 amp fuse in here, but I'll also be checking it with my clamp meter and making sure that it is actually using only 8 amps. It could be old and worn out, and as they degrade they will use more amps, so we might end up chucking in like a 15 amp or something like that fuse for it. So we'll go do that now and we'll show you the process. So I'm going to show you how I solder these. This is how they solder them in the Army, the United States Army. Basically I add strength and they add strength with this by twisting it like that, then they hook it. They hook this other side, hook it together, squeeze it down. Now in the Army, they probably wouldn't actually solder this. they use this as a strength thing, and they will just tape it for when their tank's down and this is a broken wire. They would just do this. But what we'll do is we'll actually solder it in place at this point. So I got my gas soldering iron. This may take a minute for it to heat up. So the soldering iron's hot now. We'll just tin our gas soldering iron, and then what I like to do is put a little bit on the actual soldering iron, and then this helps it feed into and start filling the actual wire. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer for it to heat up, and then we'll just give this a nice bit of solder. I don't know how easy it is to see. There we go, now it's got heat in it, and that's it. And just check your wire. That's quite nice, but I may just feed it just a touch more on that wire there. There we go. And then turn that off. Now we've got a nice, very strong solder connection. Now, in a motorsports application, you probably shouldn't be soldering anything. It can make it weak because it will actually make it brittle. So if you think that this is on a consistently moving part, for instance an engine loom where the engine is twisting and shaking the whole time, you can break it and cause a failure point by soldering. But if you're going to crimp it, you really need to use Deutsch plugs or something similar. Your typical red type and blue type and yellow type terminals just don't cut it for a majority of your cars. From factory, you'll very rarely see an actual that type of a terminal. They're all a proper plug, so do it properly. But this type of soldering, for what we're doing in a non-moving part of the body, should be okay, and it's not like we're racing and we need it to be reliable, every second of every day on a Le Mans 24-hour car, for instance. So this is strong. You will not break this. The wire will only break on either side of this soldering joint, so if it does. So that's how the Army does it, and that's how I do it. We're done with our wiring. I'll just give you a quick overview of what we did. So up here is our fuse and relay, or fused relay. It's earth straight onto a factory earth, power direct from there. That is running over along here. The power goes to the fan. This, I use the dual core wire, and this runs straight up with only the power coming off this white wire here, off this plug, which runs our 12 volt. I've measured the amperage of this fan, and on startup it's pulling 11 amps, and then once it settles it drops down to about 4.5. That tells me that because this is a cheap fan, it's overrating itself, saying that it's an 80 watt fan, but in reality this is probably closer to a 50 watt fan. So something to just keep in mind if you are looking for fans is your more expensive ones, they will show that they're the actual rating of what they are, or even underrate themselves. And these cheaper fans say that they're high rated fans. In actual fact, they're more like a 50 watt fan. So something to keep in mind when you're tossing up between expensive and cheap eBay part, basically. So yeah, but other than that, that's all sorted. It's as simple as that, and just try to make things go nicely. We'll finish by zip tying up these wiring so that it doesn't get caught in the fan or anything. I've also, another thing to keep in mind is I've kept this relay with the fuse being less than 30 centimeters from the battery. So you don't want to have your fuse any further away from that, because between the fuse and the battery there is no protection. So you want to keep that as short as possible. So that's why it's always best to run your fuse off your original fuse box if you can. So that's all. It's really easy. You can look up how to wire up a relay online, but it's super simple, just 4 wires. So that's it for today's Friday drift tip. Thanks for watching, and we will catch you next Friday.